Preparing to stream the meeting. All right. Well, welcome everyone. And as you can likely see, we are we're going live from my personal Ronnie Polder Diefenbach Facebook page because for some reason we were not able to connect to our Okanagan County Facebook Economic Alliance Facebook page. So we are going to be sharing it directly from my page. So that is where we're going to be, and that's what we're going to be doing. And so hopefully you guys will be able to still ask the questions that you need. My name is Ronnie Polder Diefenbach, and I'm the Executive Director of the Economic Alliance, and I will be conducting this interview. And you will, as we move forward, you will see members of my staff as well conducting interviews just like this to discuss topics important to your small business and for our other nonprofits and other communities in our region. These sessions will be short 5 to 10 question interviews that we hope will answer questions. Some of your most important actually need to know questions. We will allow for time for questions. Sorry about that. We will allow for time for questions at the end and encourage you to reach out to the Economic Alliance and or our industry experts to find out more about any topic that you're interested in learning more about. Today, we will be learning about a new to us program, the USDA Rural Energy for America program, REAP. We are excited to have David Funk, who is the president of Zero Emissions Northwest, who will tell us all about this new program and who should apply. Welcome, David. Can you share a little bit about your background?
Sure. Thank you, Ronnie. Excited to be here. So my background for the last 15 years has been entirely in energy. I've worked for one of the world's largest energy companies headquartered out of Rome, Italy, named Enel. And I've developed my own utility scale power plants. I've financed projects. I've bought companies. And recently I was doing fleet consulting for electric vehicles. But I did marry a farmer, and I have started this business to help farmers and small businesses in rural America. So my role here is an energy expert, and I help businesses take advantage of these programs.
Well, we are super excited to have David here today to share with us more about this program and how it can help our small businesses in rural Okanagan County. Can you give us a little bit more of a basic overview of the program, please?
Sure. So the Rural Energy for America program is run through the USDA's Rural Development Wing, and there are two categories of projects. There's the renewable energy component, which could be a wind project, a solar project, a geothermal project, or there's an energy efficiency improvement component, which is almost anything that can save energy on your business or on your farm that doesn't move. We can't work on vehicles. So this is really for where energy is being used in mostly the built environment, I would say. We've done, improvements to windows, insulation, pumps for irrigation, and then solar is primarily what's going on. This is for your business. We're not getting grandma solar panels. That's a pretty key part of that. So that's where we're focused on, is the business usage of energy.
So what kind of businesses, is it just small business? I mean, I know you mentioned agriculture. Is there certain types of businesses that this program is targeted for? What about nonprofits or city or tribal government? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes. So the categories are farmers. So as long as 50% of your gross income is coming from ag, you are eligible, even if you're in an urban environment. And we can talk about how you find out whether or not you're urban or rural, but everything in Okanagan County is rural. We've got co-ops can apply, tribal businesses, and rural small businesses. So if you were a hotel operating in Okanagan County, you're eligible. But if you are a Hilton operating in Okanagan County, you're not eligible. So there's a small business component to this. that's one of the first things that I go through with a potential applicant is, are they an eligible entity? And it depends on the Small Business Administration designation. So we'll go through that. But basically, every business in Okanagan County that is a for-profit business is eligible.
Okay. So an important question to many businesses, what is the amounts that you can apply for? And how much is grant and how much, I mean, I know that there's a potential for a loan component to this. How is that determined? And, do you normally know all of that when you're going through the application process? Can you share a little bit of information on that, please?
Yep. So from the Inflation Reduction Act, these grants have been funded to up to 50%. Before, in the Farm Bill, which is where this money gets earmarked, it's generally a 25% grant. Loans can be up to 50%, but in all of these scenarios, it doesn't ever exceed 75%. So those are a lot of percentages. We try to get the most amount of money for the project, for the business, to make sure that these projects happen. I don't write grants for practice. I write grants to get steel in the ground and to have energy savings. And to be definitely, this is a big part of this. This is a reimbursable grant. So let's say it's a $50,000 project. We might be able to get you $25,000 of a grant, and then you would have to upfront pay the 50K, and you get the $25,000 once the project's operating. So there is always a cash flow issue for small businesses that we try to, address upfront. One other point that you talked about, you don't have to spend any money before you know that you're getting a grant and a loan. So that's one of the things that I work with through the USDA is I have a no cost kind of option. Let's go get the grant and let's figure it out. And that there's no cost really out the door to the rural business or the farmer to explore this program.
Great. Well, you talked about the reimbursement. I know for a lot of businesses, and dealing with the feds, we know how long it takes us sometimes to get our income taxes back and, other things like that. Do you know, or have you worked with other businesses who have received the grants, and what does that timeline look like for reimbursement?
Mm-hmm. Overall, if we go through the grant process from a timeline, so there are 4 quarters in which we can submit grant applications: March, June, September, and December. So it's quarterly. And generally, the USDA reviews and approves these projects after 3 months of submittal. That said, if you miss the March application and we apply in April, you'll be in that June competition. They're competitive grants. So essentially, if you apply in December, you get awarded in March. If you apply in March, you get awarded in June, and so on and so forth. So call it 1 quarter delay. From that moment, you'll have 2 years to complete your project. Some projects, like upgrading an irrigation pump, might be very quick. Once you've been awarded, you can go buy the new pump, you can replace it, you're done. And then roughly about 2 months after that project's completed, we can get funding from the USDA. Drones are starting to become more and more popular. Insulation, new shop doors, those are smaller, faster projects. The bigger ones like solar or a geothermal upgrade to a business's heating and cooling system, that is probably an 18-month timeline. Those projects just require more conversations with the utility and the permitting agencies. Right. So I would say a good rule of thumb is it's never going to be faster than 6 months. So if something breaks and you need something fixed immediately, I'm sorry, this isn't a good program for you. But if you can think that, that pump in the ground is 40 years old, I think it might break in the next couple of years. Let's proactively switch it. This is exactly the program for you.
Great. And I know earlier you spoke a little bit about some of the types of projects that could be funded with this program. Can you expand on that? I know a lot of our businesses are probably thinking, oh, this isn't something that would fit with what I'm doing. And applying for a grant, that's a big thing, and a time commitment. But if we can maybe give them some examples and give them some ideas of projects and how, I mean, again, 50%, if you didn't have to pay 50% of the cost of, replacing a pump or replacing a geothermal system or whatever, I mean, that's a huge savings to that small business. So, can you share some more projects or types of projects?
Yep. So a lot of who I do work with are farmers, and they generally have a shop where they do the maintenance on their equipment. Sometimes that was built by grandpa or great grandpa, and it is leaky, it's drafty, it is cold. So a good project would be insulation retrofit, or trying to make sure the shop doors fit, or replacing a waste oil burner with a heat pump, depending on how that building's utilized. Um, Lighting upgrades. This grant can be combined with other tax credits and other utility incentives. So if there was a downtown economic development that had a window rebate, and you wanted to redo the windows for your cafe or coffee shop, we can do that. Also, if you have a cooler, I've been in some cafes that have 15 fridges and freezers that they've acquired from Craigslist.
Mhm.
Consolidating that to one walk-in freezer is a grant eligible project. Drones are a new thing for farmers if you've ever been at a farming conference.
Mhm.
So, replacing diesel usage or gas usage with an electric drone is helpful. So, we've got one grant for a farmer in Waterville that's going to replace his sprayer with a spray drone. That's a $40,000 drone. These are like almost cars. Another farmer is going to be using a drone with a thermal camera to inspect irrigation. Um, and that's offsetting, how we would do it with a 4x4 today. The big project, or sorry, the big elephant in the room, or muscle man that's doing all the work, solar. You can get a 50% grant, and right now take advantage of the 30% federal tax credit. I see most farmers exploring solar and energy efficiency. That said, the best project is not the one that I have an opinion on. The best project is the one that is going to be most meaningful to your business. So if you have a shop and it's cold, it's 52 degrees in the wintertime while you're fixing your equipment, making sure that that's a comfortable 65 and 70, that is a big, meaningful operational improvement, regardless of energy.
Right.
Same thing for that coffee shop that had 15 fridges. They were amperage constrained. They were swapping out appliances, unplugging them so they could run a microwave.
Right.
Avoiding having breakers go and headaches is a big part of what we do. So proactively thinking about what could be meaningful to your business and save energy, those are the best projects that make the most meaningful change, not only financially, but operationally.
Right. Well, those are some good ideas. I think that we have probably a lot of our businesses out there that could potentially fit that criteria. So I hope that we get people to listen and to learn about this program so that they can, take advantage of it. I know you gave us a brief overview of the timeline. People can submit applications on a quarterly basis, usually funded at that next, you're finding out whether or not the notification comes out that next quarter. Has USDA looked at the fact that, with inflations and costs continuing to rise, I know that, we've seen bids go out and then, they RFPs go out, we get bids back, and then all of a sudden, people aren't making decisions right away. A couple months comes up, and then things have risen, 10 to 15 to 20%,
Mhm.
just on materials alone. Have they looked at that, and are they continuing to take that into account when people are submitting their applications?
So I wish. It is a challenge for sure because these governments, they've got budgets, and those are limited. So just like a business has a budget, if they've allocated $25,000 for this project and it ends up being 30, unfortunately the grant doesn't ever increase. The grant will only decrease. So for example, if you were looking at a solar project and it ended up being a little bit cheaper, well, the grant's going to scale down. If the solar project is a little bit more expensive, the grant never increases. So your 50% grant might be a 47% grant at that point, depending on the increases. Hopefully, it seems like inflation has cooled a little bit on some of these parts. And as well as we focus on scaling up electrification, a lot of this we're hoping is kind of on the downward trend, right? Batteries are getting cheaper, solar's getting cheaper, and we hope that that trend continues. But for your project, we would need a proposal from a contractor. And at that point, I would probably say, hey, what's the cost premium to make sure that we do this as a negotiated price for the 6 months while we wait for the USDA to make a decision. It's always better to kind of increase things. And in the event that, we get and win a grant, if it ends up being cheaper, well, great. You still have your 50% grant and the USDA gets a little bit more money to give to somebody else.
Right. All right. Well, our Facebook page has a lot of people who have liked it and who come and look at it to find out about different programs and stuff. So we might have some folks from outside of Okanagan County watching. Can you tell us how they can check to see if their location is eligible to apply? We know Okanagan County, we're rural. We don't even call ourselves rural. We call ourselves remote. The wild, wild west. We call our, we're, when I hear some of the other rural counties say that they're rural, and I'm like, we have to be like the first frontier if you guys are rural. So can you tell us how they could go about learning about it if they're eligible?
Yes. So the USDA has people that you can call. They're great. So you can Google USDA REAP Washington and you will get a phone number and somebody will pick that up. They also have, you can Google USDA REAP eligibility map and you can get your own map from the USDA and figure it out. In Washington, I think we kind of know where the urban areas are. We've got Tacoma to Seattle, that kind of corridor, Yakima, kind of downtown Yakima, Tri-Cities, and then Airway Heights to Spokane to Coeur d'Alene is another urban corridor. If you are in between that, chances are you're rural. So, if your neighbor lives 2 miles away, you're probably rural. You're probably eligible. If your neighbor lives right next to you, let's check the map.
All right. So a huge concern, and as I was thinking about this interview, I'm thinking about several of our small businesses in this area. And a huge concern that I could think about that could be a concern for many of the small businesses is the reporting requirements, especially when you're dealing with federal fundings. What would a business be required to report and for how long? So what are the strings that are attached to the 50%?
So there's the application process. So we'll need certain documentation from your business to apply. 12 months of utility bills. We need to make sure that you're an eligible business. So your federal tax ID. The big hurdle that is probably going to be a bigger hurdle for small businesses than for farmers is registration in the System for Awards Management.gov, SAM.gov. I have partners that can help with that. So happy to talk through that. But phase one, application. We'll need some documentation. Oftentimes that's utility bills, right? We need to set your energy baseline. If you're awarded and you build the project, then we'll need proof. Pictures, statements from your vendor that they've been paid. So there's another kind of documentation process. I help in both of those areas. After the project is operating, we have a 3-year reporting requirement from the USDA. But the good news of all that is if it's a solar project, we just get the production report. If it's an HVAC improvement, we can look at your utility bills before and after. Same thing with, if we're reducing propane or diesel or any, waste oil, we can try to have some elements of just, doesn't need to be sophisticated, like a little notepad next to the waste oil burner. How many gallons did you put in at that point? And we do try to document the improvement. But I do help with that for the 3 years after the program. And it'll be really like me reaching out to you as the business owner and saying, hey, can you gather this documentation? But it should be fairly readily available. I will say that with drones, brand new. We're going to invent the reporting requirement for drones as we do that. That's a new product that has never been done before through the USDA.
Does the business have to own the building or the lot or the land that they're making the application for?
Oh, that's a very challenging kind of it's reality, right? Um, if you own the building that you're upgrading, it's the best case scenario, right? And the applicant for the grant is the energy user of the is using the energy. So for a good example, let's say you've got a farm and it might be Ronnie, farming joint venture. And if she owns that building, great. If it's under a farm corp that she also controls, we document the relationship there. One of the challenges with the whole energy transition is this tenant landlord relationship, where if you don't own your building, energy infrastructure is expensive and generally a long-term asset. So it doesn't make sense in many scenarios for the tenant to give their landlord a free new boiler. Similarly, the landlord's not seeing the pain of those energy bills. What the USDA wants is they want to see that lease term match up with the payback period of the energy improvement. So it would be a more complicated thing to kind of go through. But we can try. There are ways to get it done, but it does complicate the matter.
Well, and then, I guess following up on that is, many businesses, a lot of times we don't see them move forward with even applying for grants because they just don't have the capacity. A lot of our small businesses are micro enterprises. They're, owner operators that are in there running their business, and they just don't have the time. I mean, it's something that, oh man, I should really look at that, and it would be great if I could look at that because it might be beneficial to my business. But a lot of times it just doesn't seem to, oh, I missed the deadline. I forgot to look and I didn't get to the deadline. So is there technical assistance or grant writers available to help them through this process?
So that's what my team does. I have the contract with the USDA to go do that. The conversations that I have with eligible applicants, I have at no cost to those applicants. And some of the barriers to entry into these programs would be like an energy assessment. If you are a laundromat and you want to go from old washing machines to new washing machines, I do that math to validate those energy savings so that we can document that for the grant purposes. So ideally, and I think I've seen this, in the grants that we've worked on for an energy retrofit, it's probably about 5 hours of a business owner's time to gather the documentation, to sit down with me, to work through these projects, and really they're in the driver's seat, right? I'm this navigator through this grant process, but it's their money, it's their budget. We got to make sure that that works for the business and they understand what they're getting into. I also do a lot of financial model calculations so that they understand what does this return look like. And I will say some of the reasons that small businesses might not move forwards with this, it's life happens, right? I just bought a house or I had a kid. I got to save for college. This isn't core. And that's a big challenge that we need to overcome. And I'm trying to solve those problems. I think a really good project is one that takes advantage of multiple incentives, utility rebates, this grant, other loan programs that an economic coordinator like Ronnie would know about. And to really kind of, you got to cobble it together. If money doesn't grow on trees, right? So how do we get the money at the right rate to make sure that these projects can happen?
Right. Well, we did have one question from somebody on Facebook Live, and it's Charlene. Hi, Charlene. We're on the Family Health Center board together. She's a board member on the Methow Valley Community Center. They are replacing they have an oil burning boiler from 80 years ago. This is a big project and they're currently searching for loans and grants. Is the USDA an organization in which to inquire? And just a little bit of background on this, they're a nonprofit, and I know we talked a little bit about nonprofits up front, but the school district actually owns the facility and leases it to the nonprofit. So I don't know if that helps, your answer at all, or whether or not school districts are an eligible entity for this project or for applications for this, because they are in support of the work that they're doing.
Right. So unfortunately, as a nonprofit and as a school district or municipality, both of those entities are not eligible for these grants. However, there are other programs through the Department of Commerce, the decarbonization money that's coming out. I would say that reaching out to somebody like Ronnie in the Department of Commerce to really highlight that makes a lot of sense. The energy improvements from going from an 80-year-old boiler to modern technology, look what cars were 80 years ago, just the safety features and the technology there. I think that that's exactly the type of project that we would like to look at for a business. But unfortunately, I think Charlene highlighted some of the challenges: nonprofit, municipality, tenant landlord relationship. Great project, maybe not for REAP though.
And Charlene, the USDA does have a community facility program that I believe that this project would fall under. So let me get you that information so you can look into that a little bit more deeply and see whether or not that's something that you guys would be interested in applying for. I don't see any.
The last part of that would be like Inland Power, the utility that kind of services rural areas west of Spokane. They're rolling out some energy efficiency programs like on-bill financing. That would really be a good program for that. So I know that might not service the Okanagan County, but I think everybody has started to realize that we can see so much value if we just use less energy rather than installing renewables and all this. There's so much low-hanging fruit with old building stock and just doing things more practically.
Right. Well, I don't see any more questions in our chat. So I guess we're to our final question. And that is, David, can you share with us what you perceive as being the biggest takeaways for our small businesses if they apply for the USDA Energy Grant? And I know that you've talked about it in different ways, but how the program can help their small businesses.
Yep. So I'll start with the second question, how they can help. These are grants that pay dividends for 30 years, right? That Charlene has an 80-year-old oil burner. Energy infrastructure is long lasting. So the challenge with that is it generally is expensive up front, but it pays dividends over time. Energy costs are one of those things that I don't really see decreasing. So as you go out and reduce, we might be thinking about energy prices today, but what are energy prices going to be in 30 years? So the more that we can invest in this space today, I think it's likely that in the future, energy is going to be more expensive. The main takeaway for your rural small businesses is I am here as a resource to help. So I'm here to walk you through the eligibility process. I'm here to walk you through the grant process. I have relationships that I pull into projects. So a really cool thing that we're doing right now, we call it Solarize Washington Agriculture, but it's bundling together any eligible project that wants to do solar with all the other projects that we want to do solar with. So that allows small projects to benefit from the pricing that big projects would get. And we're seeing about a 30% reduction in upfront costs for solar by going through that program. That's 30% off the top. Then we get the grant and the tax credit as well. So we're trying to pull together practical solutions and contractors that want to provide services to rural areas to make sure that it's an easy button for your constituents, for your rural businesses.
Yes, for our rural businesses. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of our Business 101 interview with the expert to share this very important information for our local businesses. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience? Like, how would somebody if they wanted to, how would they get a hold of you?
Yep. So I have a website. It's called Zero Emissions Northwest spelled out.com. And I also have a phone number, which oh my gosh, sorry. It's written on a Post-it note right here. 509-255-3638. That's how you can get a hold of anyone on our team. And we are happy to do this, but also probably the easiest way sometimes is just to Google the USDA REAP Washington, and you'll get about 5 people all across the state. They're experts in all of these grant programs from the USDA, and they can put us in touch.
Great. Well, I went ahead and shared your phone number and your
Excellent.
website into the chat or into the comment section on the Facebook Live, so people will be able to have your information. You can also reach out to the Economic Alliance, and we're more than happy to help you and connect you with David. Excuse me. We want to see as many of our businesses here take advantage of these federal programs and the dollars that are coming out specifically for rural areas. So if you have questions, if you don't know whether or not you think that you should get a hold of David because you're concerned that you might not be eligible, get a hold of me and we can have a conversation and, even pull in David to see whether or not he can determine whether just by having a simple conversation if you're eligible or not. We're more than happy to facilitate that for you. So again, David, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you sharing this information to our area. So for everybody in Facebook land, thank you for taking the time to watch this, and don't forget to check our Facebook page weekly to find out more about our upcoming interviews and workshops. Next week, Mason is going to be interviewing our SBDC advisor, Lou Blakeney, who is going to share programs and services that the SBDC has for our Okanagan County small businesses. So you can contact us at 509-826-5107 if you have any questions. Our up next workshop is March 26th, which is mastering the essential skill of digital storytelling. And you can go to our economicalliance.com/events to register. So I appreciate everybody for being here today, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of your week.